Hi, everyone. My name is Shauna Fenwick, and I'm hosting and co-facilitating with Janelle today. So welcome, Tony. We're going to have a small and intimate conversation today about talking to politicians. Janelle, do you want to say some introductory comments?
Hi, everyone. If you don't know me, I'm Janelle Breeze-Biagioni. I'm CEO of the CGB Center for Traumatic Life Losses. I've been involved in brain injury for well over 30 years. I'm very passionate about creating some change. And I know that not only does that have to happen in our communities, but it does have to happen at a government level. And we're working really hard to educate our politicians, those who have been elected, seeking re-election, new candidates, on the importance of their involvement. All levels of government need to be involved. So that's what we're here to talk about today. How do you do that?
Great. Thanks, Janelle. And for many of us, we may or may not have had much experience in talking to politicians. So what we thought we would do is just have a conversation about how to do that. And before I go any further, I'm going to say that this is not a fancy new kind of necklace that I'm wearing today. I actually have my arm in a sling, so you'll pardon me if that seems to get in the way. I'm going to start with just sharing my screen. I'm going to do this a couple of times at the beginning, just to try to get us organized. So we're going to talk about 4 things today. Knowing your candidates, really, really important. Knowing who's running in your riding. And we have Judy joining us. Yay, Judy.
Hey, Judy.
Judy may not be on audio yet, but as soon as I see that flip, I'm going to say hello. So the first thing we're going to talk about is knowing your candidates, then about focusing your message. Sometimes it's really hard to get much time with politicians and candidates. Yay, Judy, welcome. Glad to have you with us. Just getting started. My name is Shauna, and I'm facilitating today. We are recording this session and hope that that's okay for you. 4-part meeting today. Know your candidates, focus your message so you can make the best use of your time with candidates, work with others. This is really critical, and then take action. So those are the really key things that we're going to talk about today. I'm going to just flip back and forth between sharing some screens. The next thing I want to share is about knowing who your candidates are. And this is actually pretty easy if you have access to the internet, which we all do. The website, and I'm not sure if you can see that at the top, it's elections.ca. That's where you go, where you can find out who the candidates are. And you'll get this welcome screen where you can choose English or French. So I'm going to choose English. And it'll take you to this one about the federal election on September 20th to find out about your riding, where to vote, and all of those things. You put your postal code in here. So I'll put mine in. And it takes you to a general page that has a whole bunch of different information: where to vote, what ID do I need, the election day and the advanced polling. Up at the top in this menu, you can see candidates. X, it's our vote. So you click on candidates and it'll take you to a list of the candidates that are running in your riding, the party name, and links to their website so you can find out more information about each of the candidates. So it's pretty easy. All you have to know is your postal code, go to elections.ca, and you can find out who your candidates are. So I'm just going to stop sharing that.
Can I add a little bit about the Elections Canada website there?
Absolutely,
Shauna?
thanks.
Because I do want to say, that I did a blog post for Brain Streams, and I linked it on our Heads Together think tank page, but there is accessible voting for people with disability. So really important for you to go on there, and it will tell you if your polling station, polling place is accessible. And if it's not, they will accommodate you by giving you a transfer certificate to vote elsewhere where it is accessible, or you can go to Elections Canada office. You can have a return officer come and help you. You can ask for a large grip pencil. There's all kinds of things that they have to do to accommodate people with disability. So don't be afraid to check that out.
Thanks, Janelle. That's really important. I think a place for us to start is, what are the politicians already saying? We know that a national politician, there's all kinds of issues that are out there, and we've certainly heard a lot from many of them. And I've done a quick summary on this slide here. So far, no party includes brain injury in their platform. So I've searched through all of the documents, including the Liberal one that was released just this morning, and nobody says brain injury anywhere. So it's not on their radar. They all mention mental health, so supporting mental health. And they do that in different ways, and some refer to specific groups. So there might be mental health for Canadian Forces members, there might be mental health for COVID workers, for LGBTQ folks, for First Nations, but it's kind of almost like there's a little boutique depending on which group you belong to. They'll be looking at mental health. They all mention addiction support, but there's not very much detail. The Conservatives talk about recovery and treatment, but it's not really clear what they mean by that. None of the platforms really have any indication of the overlaps, what happens when someone with a brain injury struggles with mental health and also has substance use issues. That's not really on the radar again. And there is a potential for what I called siloed national strategies. So the Liberals, and I haven't read it in detail, say they want national standards for mental health. They say they want national standards for addiction support. So they're not really quite clear in talking about the overlaps of brain injury, mental health, and addiction. So that leaves lots of room to drive into. The one thing we do know, and we had Alistair McLeod talk to us at our Lunch and Learn in June, is he put forward from the New Democratic Party a private members bill to look at a national strategy for mental health and addictions. And he's really willing to bring that back because they die on the order paper, to bring that back and add brain injury. So really what they're saying so far is not much. We really don't, we need more help with them. So what do we know? Oh, I want to change this. There you are, Tony. So I want to stop this and show you the brilliant work that Janelle did just yesterday on the Heads Together think tank homepage. And she's got some brilliant information here. And I thought I'd just show this web page because this is your one-stop shopping for information. So here is information about the federal election. And there's a link here to the Brainstreams site to learn about accessible voting that Janelle was mentioning. So the in bold here, it says it gives you information about the incidence of brain injury, that it surpasses spinal cord, breast cancer, multiple sclerosis, HIV/AIDS combined. So there you have the beginning of some information on incidence. As you scroll down, we've done some infographics out of our really a combination of last fall's think tank sessions and the Lunch and Learns in June. There's one that's for decision makers, and you can see, so this would be candidates running for office. You can see some more stats here. 230,000 Canadian women suffer brain injury as a result of intimate partner violence. Dangerous levels of substance abuse in traumatic brain injury survivors. And that there's 30 years of recommendations that haven't been implemented. So you got lots of information you can access right there. This infographic is for care providers. So we're really trying to target here anybody who provides support and services to people with brain injury, mental health, and addictions. And here there's some more stats. And when you get down to the links here, you can download the infographics and for a more complete information. We've also got one for survivors and families, what to say to decision makers, and again, a little bit more in terms of information that might help you get your message together, and then talking to federal candidates. So I love what Janelle has done here, in that all of the information you need to help you put your message together is easily accessible on the Heads Together think tank. I don't know, Janelle, if you wanted to say anything more about the information here.
Thanks, Shauna. Yeah, we want it to be easy for people. And the importance is that we are privileged. If we have the right to vote, it's a privilege we need to exercise. And I know that it can be overwhelming and intimidating for people. And I wanted to break it down to show people, you know, and Alistair McGregor, when he spoke, he said, these people are in your community. They belong to your community. They're a community member where you live. They want to make a difference. So it's like Shauna said, brain injury is not on their platform. Everything is about treatment. And what's missing in all this conversation that they're having is, what if there's not a diagnosis, like overdose survivors? not being tracked, not being monitored? And what about the prevention? Right, backing it up. So treating is important, yes, but we're talking about prevention, preventing overdoses, preventing people from suicide, preventing people from becoming addicted and self-medicating. So it's important that we all have a voice to our government. So I'm not afraid to talk to them. Tony has a voice and she has important things to say. So we wanted to break it down so you could be comfortable and have some pieces of information pertaining to your situation, add in your story to your local candidate and make an impression. What I do know is that forever and a day, we will have government. There are always going to be changing parties, but we're always going to have government. And unfortunately, we're going to have brain injury, mental health, and addiction. And so we have to keep our foot on the gas pedal to keep raising the conversation to include brain injury. So it's planting seeds. We're going to have the conversation now while they're running for election, and we'll be having the conversation after the party is elected too. So it's an ongoing process.
That's great. Thanks, Janelle. And it really segues well into the next section, is we wanted to talk about focusing your message. So I'm sorry to be toggling back and forth, but I'm going to share my screen again. Because it's really important when talking to politicians that you have a crisp and clear message. They usually won't give you much time. So it's very important to focus. What is it that you want to say to the politician? Janelle and I have done some talking about this through the think tanks last fall and our lunch and learns in June. And it's really about increasing awareness and educating. Since it's not on their radar, anyways, we want you, the message really is to help them understand the importance of brain injury, the incidents, and some of the overlapping impacts. So really the purpose of your message is to educate and increase awareness. Now, the main question, the basic question, and this can be the question you ask. You can tailor it to your own information. I'll show you a bit more about that in a sec. But the basic question is, how will your party approach a national healthcare strategy to address the overlaps of brain injury, mental health, and addictions? So how will your party approach a national healthcare strategy? Because it's very easy for federal candidates to say, well, health is a provincial jurisdiction. But you don't have to listen to the federal leaders very long to hear them talking about healthcare and how they're going to influence healthcare nationally. We know from the COVID experience that the federal government and provincial governments can come together pretty quickly to address an issue when there's a will. So really, this is a very legitimate question to ask the federal candidates: how will your party approach a national healthcare strategy to address the overlaps? Nobody's doing it. They could step out and show some leadership right away. So if nothing else, you can ask this question. You can also tailor it to local info. Once you know who your candidates are, who's running in your riding, and you may know some of them, you can actually tailor your question by sharing local stories. So for example, Tony, you could talk yourself about anytime you might have fallen through the gaps when you were unable to get service because you kind of fell in one category and not another, or people that you know, and Judy, the same thing, and who you might have worked with or who you know. Stories go a long way with politicians, as long as they're not too long. We can't really do shaggy dog stories because politicians often won't give you much time. Any local statistics? So one of the things we had talked about was whether or not to focus on the opioid crisis, because that's certainly raising its head here in British Columbia. And we know that there are a number of people who survive overdoses that have a brain injury following because of a lack of oxygen during the overdose experience. So we've done a lot to help people survive overdose, but we haven't really done very much around supporting people that do survive. So there might be some local stats. And then any local questions. So you may know that there are things that are being offered in your community that are working really well. You could give as examples, or you might know exactly where support needs to go because you've seen the gaps. So really, in terms of focusing your message, try to keep it as short as possible. Use stories, use local questions. and basically ask them about developing a national strategy.
Can I add something around the education piece to educate the candidates when they come to your door? Is one of the things to do is listen to the language they use. So if they say to you, "Oh, we definitely are going to respond to mental illness," you want to correct them. We're talking about mental health, and there's a difference there, right? And everyone is impacted in their mental health when events happen in their lives that cause stress, sadness, depression, anxiety. So you want to listen to their language because you know more than they do about brain injury. You know more than they do about these intersections. So listen to what they're saying and don't hesitate to correct them because you're actually educating them.
That's great, Janelle. And so Tony or Judy, what do you think in terms of what to say or what to ask the federal candidates in your area?
Well, I'm definitely going to try and get a hold of mine and ask this question. Because I don't know. I did fall through the cracks, but I don't know what else can be done. Being one person, sometimes it is a bit overwhelming. So yeah, I'd like to ask this question and push it forward, and let's do something. Anything is my, just do anything, please.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things I would suggest, and this is for anyone, but Tony, like if you go on to the website where Shauna showed you where those infographics are, you look at the one that for survivors and families, because that's going to speak to you and your situation. But if you can, download the one for decision makers and give it to them to take away with them or to leave with them, right? They're going to give you their pamphlet. You give them your pamphlet and say that here's some information for you to take and learn.
Yeah, I like that.
And sometimes because it's COVID and there's probably restrictions on gathering, sometimes an email is a good thing to do. You can send an email and you can attach the decision makers infographic. So you can download that, and that's a PDF, and that's something that you can send to them.
Yeah,
that's always a good way. And you can find out their emails from their websites. They'll be on that Election Canada website that will list who's running.
Okay. Yeah,
I haven't really talked much about strategies, but you can use what we've already got, and you can customize it if you have some particular stories to tell. What about you, Judy? What do you think of what we've said so far in terms of focusing your message to the federal candidates? Love to hear from you if you're able to unmute and jump in. And if not, that's fine too.
I'm not sure if our audio is working right there. Okay.
That's fine. Judy will watch and see if you're able to unmute. If you want to have a word, we can welcome you into the conversation. And if you'd rather be an observer, that's just fine too. So really the first step is to know your candidates. The second step is to focus your message. You can use that generic question that we offered, or you can develop something that's more specific to your experience or your community. So that's really focusing your message. The third thing that I think is really important is to work with other people. And a very wise man, I was at a conference once, said, never do with 2 hands what you can do with 4. Never do with 2 hands what you can do with 4. And Judy, I'll get back to you just in a second. And that really means never do anything by yourself that you can do with someone else, because it's always good to have a buddy. Okay, Judy, I saw your hand up. Jump in. You'll have to unmute yourself. Oh, I'm sorry I missed you when you had your hand up.
Oh,
I think she's having trouble with her audio to unmute. So, but feel free to yeah, I've tried. But also, Judy, feel free to type into the chat button and we can read out what you're asking as well. Another piece that I want to add is just education for people talking to federal politicians. And Alistair again educated me in this, and I really appreciated the information. what the pushback you may get is that they're going to say to you, our involvement in healthcare is that we transfer healthcare dollars to the provinces, and the province has autonomy to designate those dollars as they see fit. However, your federal government is responsible for brain injury when it comes to our veterans, from military vets, and also the territories. That falls under federal legislation. So they are responsible for brain injury in those areas. And so when we start talking to them about, you do have a responsibility in this. And as Shauna mentioned, one of the tactics that we are using is that COVID-19 was a healthcare issue, but every level of government, every ministry came together to work on a healthcare issue to correct, to change course, correct what was happening, and worked really hard at it. So where there's will, there's a way. So you want to be able to arm yourself with that knowledge that they do have a responsibility to brain injury, specifically with veterans and the territories.
Right. That's a really good point, Janelle. And working with others, I just like to say a little bit more about that. It's always easier to do this kind of work, especially if it's the first time, if you work with a buddy. Now, sending an email is something that you can do maybe easy enough on your own. It wouldn't hurt to have somebody else that would have a look at it too, to say, well, what do you think of this? Is my story too long? But the other thing you can do on your own is do a bit of a telephone tree. We used to call it telephone trees, but maybe now it's an email tree. So if you know 3 people that you think you might be able to write letters to the candidates, you can send them a draft email and say, hey, I'm sending this to the candidates. Would you be willing to send one similar as well? So even if you can't get out because of COVID or any other reason, you can't really go to an all candidates meeting because they're not being held, you can easily contact candidates via email because somebody in their office will be reading them.
Great. So Judy just commented in our chat box that she's sent a few letters to Richard Channings at the NDP, also to the leader of the NDP, which is Jagmeet Singh, and she's now contacting all candidates in her riding. It's exactly what we need people to do. Thanks, Judy.
Perfect. Now, the other thing, and I'll say this even though I don't use it, is you can use social media. I'm not on social media, but Tony, are you on Facebook or Twitter or anything like that? Facebook, okay. Yeah. So that's something else that you can use. You can use your connections on social media to post the letter that you write to the candidates and say to anybody who might be your friends on Facebook, think about sending a letter like this to your candidates. And I think in Facebook, you can add attachments as well. So you could put in the decision maker PDF.
Mm-hmm. And then also, I will be posting, little bite-sized pieces from our infographics onto Heads Tank Think Together Facebook page and CGB. Go to those pages and by all means share what I'm posting on there. So, it'll be in the context of what we're talking about, it'll be in a language that you'll be able to use, and it's just more information. And if anybody needs information, by all means, reach out to us. We're happy to help you kind of get your message down and give you materials that you can send along at any time.
Right. Now, if you're really keen, you can get involved with the local press. Now, sometimes local newspapers for those communities that still have them, some don't, but they're really always looking for stories to talk about. And so you can phone them up and say, hey, nobody in the federal elections talking about brain injury connected with mental health and addiction. So I'd really like to tell my story, or I'd like to tell you the importance of brain injury, mental health and addiction. So you can, if you're really brave. Or the radio shows. Lots of radio shows have phone-ins, and they're having phone-ins all the time now about the federal election. Well, what do you think really matters? Well, maybe they're talking about mental health, because you can always phone and talk about brain injury and mental health, or we're talking about addictions, you can talk about brain injury and addiction. So tag on your issue wherever you can and just get your voice heard.
Mm-hmm. And knowing in the approach that I always have is it's not confrontational. This is not about confronting them or party beliefs. I'm very much an issue-based voter. And so what that means for me is I don't align with any particular party that I vote for them just because that's the party I belong to. I'm an issue-based voter, and I make my vote based on what I learn about the candidate who's going to represent my voice the best. So Alistair, for 3 years, I've been knocking on his door, talking about brain injury, mental health, and addiction. And he did come through with the private members bill. Now, I will continue to do my research on that to see if that's what he's going to do should he be reelected. So, but you look at them, it's like, I'm just having a conversation. This is not about fighting about who did this, who didn't do that. It's about being selfish for yourself and saying, I have this need and it's not been met. I have friends who have this need, it's not been met. I have family, and we want to know what you're going to do about it.
I think that's really important because when we go back to the purpose, and I mentioned that when we talk about focusing your message, your purpose is to educate and increase awareness because they don't know about it. They're really in the dark. And very often politicians follow the public's lead. So if nobody is bringing this issue of brain injury, mental health, and addiction, the overlaps, if nobody's bringing it to their attention, they'll carry on because they've got a whole bunch of other things to pay attention to. So absolutely, I really support what you're saying, Janelle, is it's not about challenging them because they're not doing enough. It's about saying, hey, did you know? Did you realize that these things are all connected? And did you realize the incidence of brain injury in our community and how important it is that we have a different set of services to support people?
I like it. I like it.
Good, good.
That's
So
great. I got some emails.
That's really what we're up to here today, is we wanted to talk about 4 things. That talking to politicians is really about knowing who the candidates are, and that's pretty easy to find out from elections.ca. Focusing your message, making it really, really clear that they can understand. Focus on education, increasing awareness. Work with other people as much as you can. I know it's harder these days with COVID and various other reasons that we're not as social as we used to be. But if you can have a buddy, even a telephone buddy, to work with, to say, hey, I did it. I got an email out today. Isn't that wonderful? And do a little bit of celebration. And then take some action, because you don't have to do a lot. Sending 1 email to each of the candidates in your region in your riding is really good activity. They will probably respond back to you, and you can perhaps even have a dialogue or offer to have a phone conversation or offer to meet them for coffee or their staff for coffee. This is really about getting on the radar with candidates for the federal election. We've only got not even 3 weeks to do that in. So, you know, it's short, it's sweet. If you can do something, do it soon. So that's what today is all about. So what do you think, Tony? What do you think you might be able to do?
Definitely some emails. I'm actually got a little thing going on in my brain right now about a couple of emails, and I was just going to do 1 candidate, but I think I'm going to do all of them, and just yeah, that's going to be my first thing. Good. Good, wonderful.
Judy, what about you? What do you think you might be able to do? I think you may have mentioned this a little bit already, that you've sent some letters to Richard Channing, and you're going to write to others. What else occurs to you now? And you can just type it in the chat box. And while we're waiting to see if Judy's able to do that, I don't think I've ever written an email to a candidate. So, oh boy, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that this week. Today's Wednesday, so before Sunday, I'm going to send emails to each of the candidates. I can't type quite as well. I actually broke both my elbows, full disclosure. So
yeah. Well, one of the things I'll tell you that I do as soon as the elections are complete is I do email the elected official and say, congratulations on your new job. Happy to have you there. And here's what I'd like to talk to you about. And I will be in touch. Right? So just get on their radar, because we do have to keep the conversation going after people are elected into these positions. Again, it's still educating them. It's still pushing this forward to get it on their agenda, because as you know, Shauna said, you know, they're not talking about it. They don't know about it.
I think that's brilliant, Janelle. So we could do all of this work during the campaign, and then somebody gets in. Well, it's really important to follow up, to say, yes, congratulations. Remember when we had that conversation about brain injury in the middle of the election? well, I'm here now and there's more to learn. So please, let's get together and have a cup of coffee or a phone conversation, and so that I can support you in your work, in your new job in Ottawa.
So Judy just typed into the chat that she'll check with other candidates and email them all. If I had one come to my house, I think I would be lost for words. So Judy, that's exactly why Heads Together Think Tank website has got the infographics right on there. Take a look at them, because it is about arming yourself with some knowledge so you have confidence to talk about what you need in your life. Yes, listen to what they have to say, but you will hear that what's on their platform are all the buzz items that everybody else is talking about. And it's not that those aren't important issues for us. Energy is important. The pipeline conversation is important. What's happening in Afghanistan is important. We all need to be informed. We all need to do what we have to do to take action there. But stay focused. Still know that your issue is important. And unless we keep the importance on it, it will get lost in the shuffle again.
That's brilliant. And I'm just going to share my screen one more time and go back to the website, the Heads Together Think Tank website, where there are the infographics. This is the one for decision makers. And if you scroll down, there's a link that says download the decision makers infographic. And when you hit that, it should show you this. Janelle, can you see the infographic?
Yes, yeah, I can.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's actually 2 pages and it's quite colorful. So you can print it in color if you have a color printer, but it works just as well in black and white if that's all you have. And so for decision makers, it talks about brain injury and intimate partner violence. It talks about the opioid crisis and brain injury. It talks about the challenges with when care is not integrated or when funding is given in silos. And then it says, what action would we like decision makers to do? And you'll see it's about promoting research to develop a consensus statement. And Janelle's working in British Columbia to have a forum to talk about a consensus statement sometime in mid-2022. It talks about promoting education for healthcare providers, and it talks about strategies, provincial and national. So this information is all here. So I really understand what you're saying, Judy, about being lost for words, because I usually am too when a politician comes to my door too. But you can give them this and say, well, and even point to one piece. The most important thing I'd like to say to you is here on page 1 or here on page 2. And you can use the infographic really a bit of a prop, a bit of a reminder, and to actually leave it with them as they go.
Great.
Great. Okay. So Janelle, what else do we do you want to say? And then I'll go around and see if Tony and Judy have any questions.
Well, I appreciate everybody's interest in this, and you know, I'm excited to be able to provide some coaching. I think is probably coaching and mentoring on this, because I think people do get intimidated that it's a federal politician or it's a federal candidate, or you know, that they think it's somebody outside of them. But go back to what Alistair said to us. These are members of your community. They may be farmers, they may own a vineyard, they may be a local mechanic, but they're coming to this because they want, 1, to serve, 2, because they care about what's happening in their community. So when I flip my thinking into that this is a community member who wants to serve in my community and be my voice, and they want to know what's happening here, that's a whole different conversation. It's friendlier, it's warmer, it's just person to person. And so it's really important to build those relationships as you go, and happy to talk to anybody. So yeah, don't be afraid of them. They're coming to you because they want to represent you. So don't be afraid to bring forward what you need represented at a government level.
That's great. Absolutely right. And I really understand what you say, Judy, about sometimes they're not approachable. Sometimes they kind of get wound up in their own agenda of seeing so many people a day or saying their own talking points that sometimes they don't listen. So having that infographic in hand and being able to give it to them, I think really helps slow them down and bring them to focus. Great. Tony, what questions or comments do you have as we bring this session to a close?
Really no comment, mostly So if I do, or I am able to make contact with whomever is going to be representing me, I, can I get some help with that? I mean, can I'm not quite sure what I would do after that. That to me would be like, wow.
Yeah, just reach out, send me a text or an email. Happy to coach you on, if you get a meeting with them, happy to, arm you with some information and just get you comfortable doing that. If you write an email, you want to send that to me to take a look at, happy to do that too. Yeah.
Okay,
Great. And Janelle's got a lot on her plate, so she's getting lots of requests for assistance. She might farm some of them over to me, and so I might try and respond too. But the point is, never do anything with 2 hands, you can do with 4. So if you can have somebody else come in and be your buddy, whether it be one of us or somebody else that you might work with or know who's got some similar circumstances, then do reach out.
Okay, definitely.
Judy,
what about you? Any comments or questions?
So she's saying that she is going to send emails and drop off copies of the literature. And she said, me, Nell, which is her nickname for me. I have no problem talking. She doesn't. So that's great.
Yay.
Yeah,
Yay.
that's great.
Judy.
And it is just really great to have that print material, just so you have something to leave with them that they can ponder and think about, but to give you confidence too.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. Well, I think that kind of winds it up for what I had organized for today, what Janelle and I were talking about. We really want to support you, want to get the word out. It's not, brain injury isn't on anybody's radar, so there's a ton of work to do. So let's get started.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I do want to say thank you to Paige and Paulina, our students who couldn't be with us today, but Paige and Paulina came to us for practicums over the spring and summer through Mohawk College in Ontario, and they have been brilliant to work with, and they've done so much of our social media graphics to get that ready for us, and I really enjoyed working with them, and I know that we learned as much from them as they learned from us. So thank you to them, and again, thank you, Shauna, for always your confidence in what we're doing and the brilliance that you bring to the table too, and keeping us focused. So I appreciate it.
Great.
And of course, Judy and Tony, superheroes in my eyes. So happy to help you get your stories out there.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, guys. Appreciate everything you guys do.
So thanks everyone. Janelle, maybe we could stay after you stop the recording and just have a quick word, the 2 of us. So thanks, Tony and Judy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.